It's okay not to make commitments. Yet when you make them, you're better off going through with them and learning your lesson than you are from letting yourself off the hook.
Thing that got me the most was when you started talking about commitments, because we've all been there. I've made commitments all the time. I'm going to do X. I'm going to work out. I'm going to get in the best shape of my life. And it lasts for 2 or 3 days. And then something else comes into your life and you get busy, or you get tired, or you sleep in, or you have something that grabs you and you don't stick to it. And Nicholas laid out a framework that was all around commitment and trusting yourself to make good commitments. Nicholas, can you talk a little bit about that? Because that was one of the best things that I think you ever shared for me personally.
Thanks, man. And if there's anything specific that I said, again, I like to do things off the cuff. I like things to be fresh. So if I missed something, go ahead and tell me. But there's a few things for me that have been super transformational when it comes to commitment. And these always are changing, because as I'm growing, I'm consistently thinking of new things to be able to teach it better. I was not the committed person. So just to put a little bit of context on it, I was the person that when I was in wrestling, when I was in 8th grade going into my freshman year of high school, I was the guy that we had to run 3 miles. I couldn't run 3 miles. So I would run until like half the people got done, and then I would like walk off with them and not finish the 3 miles. I was the one that was in the gym, and I'd have the workouts. And when the coaches were watching, because I always wanted approval, right? Like from my dad and the coaches, I'd work super hard. There was even a thing where you could challenge varsity every single week to take their spot, and no one would do it, but I knew it would get attention. So I always challenged, yet I was never fit enough to actually beat them. I bet if I was fit, I would have actually beat them. So I was consistently acting like I was doing all the right things, but behind closed doors, that's actually what's going to be shouted out to the world. What's done when no one's watching. And if you're only seeing what people are doing when they're being watched, that's literally just the smallest little fraction of their life. So I remember being 18 years old. So this must have been around 2009, 2010. I ended up meeting this guy named Yost Jansen. I went to this business meeting, and it was like business people and like a church meeting at the same time. And I remember meeting this guy who just came back from deployment as a Navy SEAL, 6'3", really gnarly looking dude. And he was super impressed by me. And I started hanging around this guy and started seeing that he acted different. I spent 3.5 years working out with this guy. And one of the things that he taught me was this. He said, everyone thinks that commitment, which by definition, if you want to write this down, is doing what you said you're going to do after the feeling you set it in is gone. Right? Everyone makes commitments when things feel good. Back when Yost was Navy SEAL, one of the big things they would do is they'd be sitting around the campfire feeling all warm and excited. They're like, oh, we're going to get up in the morning early and we're going to go swim over this way. And a lot of people make commitments when they're in the comfort of their own home. They're not in an uncomfortable situation. And then as soon as things get uncomfortable, they end up going back on their commitment because they're like, whoa, this isn't what I expected. Yeah, because you were in a freaking warm place with lots of food, feeling really great about yourself, and you decided to make a commitment to something. And then all of a sudden, when things got hard, we ended up breaking it. I remember him telling me that there's 2 types of commitments. There's the commitments you make to other people. Those commitments are easy to follow through on. Steve said, Nicholas, will you do this podcast today? Well, I have to think about the fact that if I don't show up, Steve's going to be upset. I'm going to leave him hanging. I'm going to break off that commitment. And a lot of people follow through on commitments that they make through to other people because they don't want to let them down. Yet the number one most important commitment that we can make is the commitments to ourselves, and how psychologically and how in our subconscious mind, how it affects the way that we do life when we say something like, it's Sunday night, we just ate a bunch of food. Maybe we're even feeling, oh man, I ate too much. Like, you know what? You know what would be great? Like, I'm going to wake up at 6 tomorrow and I'm going to work out. So we wake up and then we're tired because last night we weren't tired when we made the commitment. But then also we wake up, we're not tired, and we end up not doing it. Or maybe we do it that day and then we put this another commitment on ourselves. And then all of a sudden it's like we end up falling off. What ends up happening is now whenever you have a new opportunity come, your subconscious mind is saying, no, you're not. Like, oh, I'm going to go do this workout. It's like, no, you're not. And all of a sudden you have this division inside of yourself because you say you're going to do something, you don't do it, and then your actual self can't trust yourself. And it creates its own demise. And so I remember actually seeing this, the way I learned commitment was from this guy. A few different things I learned from it was, one, I saw him walking his dog one day, he had this huge dog. And he got on the skateboard, and because he's a Navy SEAL, he has all these cameras in his house. So he plays back this camera of him riding a skateboard with his dog off a curb. He gets wheel bite, which is when your wheel hits the skateboard and stops suddenly. And then all of a sudden he stops suddenly on his face on the concrete. Bloody face. gets up, gets on the skateboard. All of a sudden, 15 minutes later, you see him come back on the camera, and then he goes and washes himself off. I'm sitting there like, you got to be kidding me. If I fell and face planted, bloodied up my face, the first thing I'm doing is saying F the dog, going inside, cleaning up, and the dog can go take a crap in the backyard and run around. This guy was so big on completing the things that he had started that he finished walking the dog. It had just become a piece of who he was. I remember working out with him for 3.5 years. I sat there, we wrote up workouts on the board. We'd think of new things. Be like, oh, let's do this. So like, yeah, let's do it. We'd be an hour in, halfway done, because we were freaking dumb with thinking about the workout. And I'm like, oh, that was great, man. Like an hour is like what I usually do. And he's like, what are you doing? I'm like, that was the best workout I've ever done. He's like, no. Like, finish the workout. But I already did more work than I normally do. And he's like, no, finish the workout. And then afterwards, you can choose next time not to do that. But you chose this time to do it. And you're going to screw yourself mentally if you allow yourself off the hook to not complete this. Because one, you'll make big commitments. So people might want to write this down. People make such big commitments to themselves and other people that they never fill on because they know they can get out of it. What happens when you follow through on a commitment that's hard is you learn your lesson to not make the commitment again. It's okay not to make commitments. Yet when you make them, you're better off going through with them and learning your lesson than you are from letting yourself off the hook. And then the second thing is the psychology of being able to get through these hard things and be able to make it through the other side. And so altogether, the things that I had learned from him was that, man, if someone says, meet me at this location, we're going to be there for the other people. But we tell ourselves these things and we think, oh, I'll just go to the gym at 3 actually. Oh, I'll push it back. Oh, I could do these other things. And we put everyone else's priorities above our own.